Hey guys, how's it going? Tonight I'm working on a project here. I'm installing a StormWerkz Picatinny rail section to the top cover of this Arsenal SLR-104UR that I've had SBR'd here for, I don't know, about a year or so. This is the second time I've done this. You'll see that top cover above the rifle there. That is the original top cover that came with the rifle. Since purchasing the rifle, I ended up buying the Gen 2 cover, or top cover that you see on the rifle now. And I wanted to do the same sort of Picatinny mount on that cover that I did on the original. So I figured the second time around I would shoot a video showing you how to do it and how to do it right the first time around, because let's face it, the rail is expensive. It's about 50 bucks, I think. Obviously the rifle is expensive, and the replacement top covers, if you screw it up, are expensive. So it's really worth making sure we do everything right from beginning to end, and making sure that the holes are aligned properly, that the Picatinny rail gets aligned with the access of the rifle properly. So that way, by the time you're done with the project, you're really happy with the way things turned out. Things are holding zero, and and all that stuff. So let's take a look real quick. And what I'll probably do, because I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of questions about the rifle itself, and I don't want to make this video real long answering and talking about the rifle itself. I'll probably do a second video just detailing my experiences with it and the accessories that are on it now. But for right now, let's talk about the task at hand. So this is what we're looking at. This is the rail section from StormWerkz. As you can see, really nice machining. They got some really nice relief cuts to try to match with the contours of the top cover. So a very high quality piece. These are about $50, but like I said, you're paying for quality. It's made in the USA. You're supporting a local businessman, in the AK and firearms industry. So for 50 bucks, I think it's worth the price of admission. It gives you something real solid to mount an optic to. It comes with the rail section and the screws, and there are some instructions online on how to install it. But instructions online are, they're just that. It's easier to kind of, watch someone do it or walk you through how to do it. So essentially where this piece goes, so this is a Generation 2 top cover. This is the Generation 1 top cover, and that is also a StormWerkz rail that I installed. So I want to talk to you about how this one went and what I did to get that one going. But we're going to do it on video this time, and so that you guys can understand how to put this on. So essentially this fits in this space here. And that gives you the ability to mount an optic. We're going to roll with this Holosun HS403R. This is a new optic from them. I mean, it's basically a mirror image of an 8.T1. Been very impressed with the stuff Holosun has been coming out with lately. Their quality has really improved. So we're going to give this a go. If I don't like it, I'll just throw a T1 on there. But anyway, so what we're going to do is once that rail is in place, that is going to allow this optic to sit in a more classic position versus mounting it forward, like right here, like on the Ultimax. So without further ado, we'll break this video up into parts. Now that you guys know what we're doing, we'll talk about the tools you're going to need, and then I'll walk you through the installation. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the tools you're going to need in order to get this job done. We'll start over here on the left. These are made by Dremel. These are what they call a high-speed cutter. They are very sharp, got a nice sharp point, and this is going to help us get our holes started. You have an Allen wrench. That is for the screws. A couple different types of drill bits here. These are 7/64s and 1/8, or if you have maybe a pack that came with a Dremel or something like that, you could use that. Now, depending on what your top cover is made of, they're not really all the same. The Gen 2 that I'm working on now is kind of a sheet metal cover. Some of the other ones, I think the M92 and the Gen 1 for sure, they kind of have a harder steel tab you're going to have to get through. So if that's the case, you're going to want a really good, cobalt steel bit, to be able to get through that. And then applying a little cutting fluid definitely helps that job go pretty quick. You're going to want some thread locker. In this case, we are going to be using the Vibratite VC3. This is not a heat-prone area, so we don't need to worry so much about that as we do things rattling loose and maybe one of those bolts dropping out. And this Vibratite is really good stuff for that. So down here, you're going to want some masking tape. This is a spring-loaded center punch. You definitely want something like this. Here is a needle file. Let's see if we can get this to focus. You can get these at Harbor Freight or anywhere else. Hopefully you don't have to use this. You only really have to use this if maybe you get one hole or something off center and you kind of need to file it a little bit to get it back into place. But hopefully you won't need this, because that brings us to this magic here. So this is what's called a transfer punch. You can either buy them by the kit like this. They got a bunch of, I think this one has 28 pieces. It's not expensive. This whole set is like 16 bucks. Or you can try to find, if you just want to buy one, this is the 7/64 one. And what these are, if you haven't seen one of these before, but they come in drill bit sizes, and maybe we can get you a better look here. So essentially they have really sharp points, as you kind of see here, in the dead center of what would be the hole you're going to drill. So this one, for example, is the one that we're going to use for our hole, and this is what you're going to mark the dead center of the holes where you're going to want to drill. And we'll get into that. I'll show you how that's done. But essentially, you're going to put a piece of masking tape on the cover. Then you're going to put the rail in place. Once you have the rail in place, you're going to use your transfer punch to mark the dead center holes, or the dead center of the hole on the masking tape. And then you're going to use your center punch, and these aren't expensive either. These are about 10 bucks to mark the spot where you want to get the hole started. In our case, we're going to, once we have those two areas marked, we're going to use one of these cutters here, the real sharp, real fine point, to kind of get the hole started. And that'll set us up for success when using the drill bits, so that the drill bits don't walk left or right or forward and back and give us an off-center hole. So anyway, like we said, we're, all of this total is probably maybe 30 bucks worth of tools, if that, so you're also probably at some point down the road, you're going to end up using a center punch. These things definitely are going to come in handy because you might have to do something similar down the road. So it's really kind of an investment in this project and then in any future project. So with all that said, let's get started. So here we are. This is just to mock things up and keep the rifle in good lighting for you guys. When I actually go to drill these holes, I'm going to put it in a vise, and I'll show you while we're working on that. But what you're going to do is you're going to set the rifle up. You're going to have the top cover on the rifle. You're going to grab yourself a piece of masking tape, and you're going to put that piece of masking tape across the top here and kind of smooth it down with your finger. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to get your StormWerkz rail, and you're going to put that in place. And I'm just kind of sitting it there right now. It definitely has a spot that it likes to ride in, but you can kind of shift it a little bit left and right and a little bit front and back. So I kind of centered it as best as possible in the middle there. And this is a pretty important step. So on my Gen 1 top cover, I have already done this with the picatinny rail. And what ended up happening is I took the top cover off when I was doing all of this, had it mounted up, put it in the vise, had everything kind of set, put the rail in place, marked my holes, drilled my holes, and put the picatinny rail in. And then once I got it on the gun and then I put my optic on it, I noticed my optic was like crooked. And it was kind of like that too. And I was like, what the heck? I thought I got everything right. Everything looked, the holes were in alignment, everything looked good. Well, it turns out that, on that particular one, basically the rear sight is sitting basically where the hinge is. And the hinge itself, this piece here was not dead center on the top cover. whenever they had put it together at the factory in Bulgaria or wherever it had been assembled. The top cover and the spot welds and the hinge assembly was kind of cockeyed. And so when I had mounted my picatinny rail was kind of cockeyed and was pointing the wrong direction. And so it really made for a sloppy looking optic setup through the user point of view. So I ended up taking it apart and spending about 2 hours shaping that piece of picatinny with a Dremel and some files to get it to go from something that looked like, you know, kind of like that, back over to center and then back online. But that took a lot of work. So long story short, make sure that when you have this in place, before you go drilling and making holes and all that kind of stuff, just double check that it looks right. Go ahead and mount your red dot on it, take a look through it, see if it's off one way or another or crooked in any way, and then kind of make your plan of attack and drill your holes, because if you need to shift this a little bit this way, your holes are going to be off. And that's not good, because then you're going to have to get that file out we talked about before and kind of open those holes up, and now they become more like ovals, and you know that means that you know, there's a potential that if this takes a hard blow that it could shift the picatinny rail one way or another, and you know that's not a good thing. So all right, so anyway, enough talking about that. So we have our masking tape down. We're going to say we did all that checking. Now we're going to get out our transfer punch with that needle front on it. And we are going to go straight down. Let me get around on this side so you guys can see. So we are going to go straight down through the hole, and you're going to apply some pressure and you're going to twist. And ideally you're going to either have this clamped or you'll be holding onto it with your thumb. I can't do that with the camera on here. And you're going to do it to the next hole and to the next hole. And that's going to give you the exact dead center of where that hole is. So when we take this off, we'll see if we can pick up on it on camera here. Yeah, so you can see, so there's 1, 2, 3, all in a perfect row, all dead center to the hole. And then what you're going to do from there, before you actually do your drilling, you're going to take, this is a spring-loaded center punch. So you're going to go and you're going to find the hole here, and you're going to get that tip directly in that hole. I'm not going to do it on camera here, but I want to give you guys the idea. And you're going to press down on this, and it's going to go whack. And it's going to leave a indentation or a deeper indentation into the receiver top cover. And what that's going to do, hypothetically, or what it should do, we'll see, is that's going to give you the starting point for when you actually drill. You're going to put the tip of your drill bit exactly in that center punched hole before you start the drill. And then as the drill turns, you're going to go real slow, and that'll keep the bit from walking left, right, front, or back. And so you get a straight shot directly dead center, 1, 2, 3. And then once you have that dead center shot, then you know your rail is going to be mounted dead center perfectly the way you had mocked it up. Okay, so like we mentioned before, once you have your marker holes marked, you know, in the masking tape here, you got 1, 2, 3. We're going to use a spring-loaded center punch. We're going to get right on top of that hole there, and then we're going to press down. Okay, there's one. I'm going to catch that second one. All right, and the last one. Perfect. We can do that a couple more times, which we probably will, just to make sure we get, you know, the indentations correct. But let me pick up the camera here and show you what that looks like. So you see we have some really nice clean divots there from our markings from earlier. So that's going to help us keep the bit centered when we go through that top cover. All right, so we're back. Okay, so the rifle's set up in my vise. The bolt carrier and piston obviously has been removed because we're going to be drilling downwards and we don't want to hit those items and potentially damage them. You know, you can actually put a piece of paper towel or something in here if you're concerned about shavings or whatever getting in there, but typically just kind of blow that out. So these are some pieces of leather to keep the finish of the rifle from getting marred in the vise. On the drill here, we have a little bit of cutting fluid, and these are those high-speed cutters from Dremel I was talking about or showed you and what the items you should pick up. So these are very sharp, pointed cutting devices here that you can make really nice precise holes or starter holes with it or tapered holes, but for our purposes, being able to put that real sharp point into the spots where we had already marked previously is going to give us a real good advantage of getting those holes started without the drill bits walking. So I did the first hole already and it was just a super piece of cake. It just found the center like nobody's business and went straight through that top cover and made a nice perfect hole. No walking, no drama, no nothing. So we have the next couple to do. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to drill with one hand and film with the other just to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. So bear with me if the camera gets a little shaky here. Okay. Like I said, bear with me. But you can see how nice and sharp that point is and how easy it is to locate where we should be. I'm just going to go ahead. You can see some of that cutting oil or cutting fluid dripping down on there. I'm just going to go ahead and start the drill. And you can see it's cutting through the top cover. You don't have to go fast, you can. And we're through. So that's already through that top cover. So like I said, no drama, no problems. I'm going to go ahead and knock out this next one and then pick up from there. Okay, so I finished up with the Dremel attachment to the high-speed cutter. And these are the holes that are left, just really nice, even, perfect starter holes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get the actual drill bit out that we'll be using, the 7/64 drill bit, and that will open these holes up, and there will be basically no likelihood that this is going to walk anywhere or get out of line or anything like that. So this is looking really, really nice so far. All right, so as you can see, the nice starter holes that we made using the Dremel high-speed cutter, you know, are perfect, really nice. I actually drilled this center hole just now. Started with a 7/64 drill bit and then chased it with a 1/8 drill bit, and then I may just touch it up just a little bit with a file or maybe a little bit with that Dremel cutter because the screw is just having a little bit of a hard time getting through there. But we want these holes to be tight and we want them to be in line, perfectly in line. That's what's going to keep that piece of picatinny rail really nice and tight on top of this this receiver without any wiggling around. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these next two and we'll go from there. All right, here we go again. So got that hole drilled already. We have a 7/64 bit on the drill right now with a little cutting fluid on it. We're going to start in that nice starter hole here that we have going for with the Dremel already. So as you can see, no walking, no issues. Just perfect, right straight through. While we're here, let's go ahead and do this one. Same thing. No issues. Straight through. All right. Sorry, it's kind of hard to film and do this at the same time. And so as you can see, the result is 3 perfectly aligned holes, 1, 2, 3. I'll probably chase these with a little bit of a larger bit. And that'll open them up just enough to get those screws through, and then we'll mount that picatinny piece. Here we are. We just finished our drilling, so we have 3 nice round holes, perfectly centered, perfectly lined. We dry fitted this to make sure that everything worked okay. So we have our screws, and this is the Vibratite that I talked about a little bit earlier. This is the VC3, so essentially what you do is you kind of, you fill about half of the threads with this stuff, and you give it about 30 minutes to set up or dry. You know, you can use blue Loctite as well. This is just what I happen to have on hand, and it seems to work pretty good. So the next thing we are going to do is we're going to use our Allen wrench here, and we are going to go ahead and start what I would call the final assembly here. If I can get these little screws here to cooperate, there we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and get them started here. And I'm just really stoked about how nicely this is coming together. All right, so now that they are all snug, I'm just going to go ahead and alternate here and torque them down. You know, there's not really a torque specification here. It's just sort of by feel. You don't want to strip the threads, but you want it snug enough to where you know it's not coming loose. And they all feel torqued about the right value to where, you know, you're on this wrench here and the wrench starts to bend, you know that you're pretty much done. So that is it. Looks good. Totally centered, totally aligned. Everything looks great. So let's go ahead and get it on the gun. All right, guys, we are done. Whew. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I was able to provide you with some tips and tricks on how to do this to your rifle. The critical steps involved in getting those holes centered and drilled centered and marked correctly. All of that extra effort at the beginning ends up with a perfectly mounted rail, a nicely centered rail. Everything is where it's supposed to go. No ovaled holes, no shifting Picatinny rails, none of that junk. So I'm really, really happy with how this came out. It looks great. The optic position on the rifle is exactly where I wanted it to be. It's in more of a traditional positioning on the receiver or above the mag well. The sight picture is exactly what I wanted, and you actually see the red dot through there if it looks like it's picking up on camera here. So it looks just like that when you have it shouldered, so you end up with a the front sight and a little bit of the lower part of the sight window. But other than that, you have a really nice clear sight picture, perfect height. Everything is rock solid, so couldn't ask for a better project ending. So hopefully this leads you guys to the same outcome on your rifles. Like I said, take your time, do those prep steps, get the center punch and the transfer punch and all that sort of stuff. And once you have all that, this should be the way things turn out. So good luck. Thanks a lot.